wife of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, who passed on earlier on today after being treated for pneumonia. He was admitted to hospital last week. We'll be speaking to people from various quarters of his life to share with us how they remember him, how we should continue to celebrate his legacy. We're joined now by Dr. Kaunda's son, Kenneth Kaunda. A very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us, and indeed our condolences as the SABC family.
Thank you very much to all of you there for your words and your prayers. I appreciate it, and I think the family, on behalf of them as well, we appreciate it. Thank you very much.
I mean, I'm sure it goes without saying that it is a sad day, that you have been, in a way, preparing for this day. But I believe that your family has dubbed you as a storyteller of the family, and I'm going to continue along those lines and say, please just share with us the last couple of days, the last couple of moments that help you remember your father fondly.
Yes, of course. I, for one person who lives near him, or lived near him, and most of the time, of all the members of the family, I'm the one who was with him, and even in his later years, when he traveled, I'm the one who traveled with him. So obviously, I'm sure there are some things which I will be imparting to my brothers and sisters and the rest of the family about our conversations that we had over the last couple of years, that where I spent most of my time with him.
And what were his thoughts in the latter part of his years? What was the thing that most occupied him? I know he had a great love for Zambia, obviously a great love for Africa as well, but some of the teachings that he imparted to you, that only your father can do that, only Dr. Kenneth Kaunda.
Well, what I can say is that in his later years, his connection to the Almighty became much, much stronger. And most of the times when people would come to visit him, they would never leave without his blessings, and his words were always the same. Love God, your Creator, with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind, in all you think, say, and do. And those who saw him in the later years and later days will remember that that's what always his parting words to whoever came to visit him.
And his illness, I'm sure it would have touched him a lot, the fact that there were a lot of people, not only in Zambia, but across the continent, who were praying for him. He was still lucid, I know that, but I know there were instances where age was getting the better of him. But just share with us just the sentiment that he had towards the people of Africa, the fact that they still held him in such high esteem as a teacher, as a father.
He was always concerned about the welfare of the fellow human beings. That never, ever went away from him, whether he was meeting people on the streets or whether he was watching the news and something that was affecting people's lives was being talked about. He always felt that maybe there's something he should say or make a comment about. We had to just slow him down most of the times and tell him, look, Dad, you've done your part. Let those who you've left untaught to do this work continue with it. But he never let go in terms of thinking that there's something somewhere that he could contribute to the betterment of his fellow persons.
We were speaking to Isaac Nkama earlier on, who was just describing how your father, the old man, as you called him, was strict, and he was a very regimented person. One of the things you've said in the past as well is that he had a lot of achievements, but never did them for recognition. When did you start realizing this? That he was an important, impactful icon, liberation struggle icon, but that he was very nonchalant about the recognition that came with it?
Well, for some of us, the realization of how people saw him would come when we left the country. For example, each time I was in South Africa and I take a visit to Soweto, and the masses there were sitting with some friends or something, and if someone would identify me as being a son, the words, the kind words that would come forth, that's where you start to remember is that actually this old man is not looked at the same way as I do, as just my father. It's times like that that you realize that people looked at him in a different way, and that they looked to him for a lot of things that happened, and were grateful to him. Just today, when the news went, one of my closest friends, who had never said this to me before, we were at school together, and he went to university with us and everything. But today he was in tears and saying, look, I've never told you this, but for me, I would have been absolutely nothing without your father. So it's times like that that you start thinking, wait a minute, actually, people do see this man or saw this man in a different light.
Mm. And his relationship then with his grandchildren, and as the years went by, just share with us then how they then related to him. As you always said that you just saw him as a father who was God-loving, God-fearing, loved the people of Zambia. How were his grandchildren able to relate to him and the one Zambia that he was preaching for?
Well, the grandchildren, they even had a nickname for him. They didn't call him grandpa, they called him Shiks, which is sort of like a slang for the word Shikulu in our language, means grandfather or grandma. So they had that nickname for him. So they never called him by what normally children would call their grandfathers. So they were very close to him. He was their friend. And, sometimes other members of the family would come and say, no, how could the children behave like that to them? I said, look, he's their grandfather, and he treats them like their friends. So that's how they related to him, as their friend. It wasn't like, this big man who was this or that or that. To them, he was just their friend.
It was interesting just speaking to some former ministers who served under him there in Zambia. The shock was so palpable, and they almost felt pretty beaten. The legacy that he leaves behind is obviously quite huge. Was he still talking about some of these things? Some of them were quite disappointing, but as we heard from Mr. Ngama earlier on, that he was not the kind of person who would criticize. He would rather celebrate that which is good.
Yes, he was like that. And I remember a few countries, I won't mention where, and they would want to come and give him some sort of gratitude for his work in material things, and he would always turn it down. And he would say, look, if I'd wanted material things, I would have got them in another way. I would not have gone into the service of serving my fellow man and woman because of material gains. So that is one thing that really, if you wanted to upset him, give him money or something as a reward for doing something what he thought was his duty as a human being to do. He never, ever looked at what he did as something which at the end of the day will give him material rewards. That was not his position at all.
And I believe that this is one of the reasons why, as children, you never went on holidays abroad, that you holidayed in the continent, or got to teach you as much about Zambia as possible. So were these the kind of lessons that you think were trying to inculcate you from the get-go to help you appreciate home, to help you appreciate your immediate community, empowering your community?
Yes, we never went to these overseas holidays to Paris and all those so-called exotic places all over the world. When we went on holiday here at home. And unless otherwise a situation where maybe one of his friends, for example, the president of Mozambique, would say, look, I would like the children to come and spend the holiday here. Then we'd go to Mozambique or to Tanzania. But we went to places which had a connection to Africa all the time. So that is how we were brought up, in that we holidayed in Zambia. And if we did go outside, it would be to a fellow African country.
Mm-hmm. I believe one of the things that he did when he was still alive, and you obviously were old enough to understand, was to apologize to you for focusing so much on the politics and not spending enough time with you as a family. Tell me, how did that conversation go, and what were your thoughts then?
Well, he tried to, as much as possible, to make up for spending more time in his office and working with the work that was in front of him than with his family. That is where the holidays came in. He made it a fact that every year, at least once or twice, he put some weeks aside for the family to spend with him. And we didn't spend it sitting at home in State House. We would go either to grandmother's village, his mother's place, or would go to grandmother's place, his mother-in-law's place. We would always go to holiday to one of those two places. In other words, keeping in touch with our relatives from both sides, his side and my mother's side. So that is what they brought us getting to know. So we didn't grow up in State House and those relatives of ours are there and that's it. But we actually went to spend time where my mother came from. We actually went to spend time where he came from. And that's what he made sure that every year we did that.
And how did he impress upon you the need to be connected to culture and traditions? Because I believe that was important for him, that you stuck with those.
Well, that manifestation of taking us to these places was one way. The other way was that when we did sit as family, he would always impart to us things that happened in his life. And sometimes he'd tell us why he did certain things. I remember, for example, when we first started having bodyguards. We never had bodyguards growing up, but we reached a stage when the liberation movements were getting stronger and the resistance was getting stronger from those who were fighting. We started having bodyguards, and we told them, so look, Dad, we don't like having bodyguards. Why are you giving us these fellows to follow us around? And he explained, he said, look, I have made a commitment to this task that I've put the liberation of my continent and our neighbors as priority. And those who are fighting know that I'm prepared to lay down my life for that. But they know that the weak spot that might be you, the children. So this is why from now on you guys will just have to bite the bullet, and from now on you have to have these guys around you for your own protection. But it was that kind of resolve that he had, because he could have said, hey, my family is in danger, I'm not going to do this anymore, and left it. But he stood his ground.
And just as a follow-up on that, I understood that even some of his close friends were against that, this commitment to fight against the apartheid regime. Did that affect his friendships at the time? Did it leave to fissures within the family?
No, the family never ever discussed politics that deep. We left it to him, and we believed that he knew what he was doing. So we never engaged him when it came to things like that. Our uncles, late Oliver Tambo, and the others would be walking up and down, and we'd be passing them by the corridors of State House, and we understood why they were there. So it was never like, hey, Dad, why are these guys in at home here, and spend more time with them, and not us. But we understood where he was coming, and he took time to explain to us what used to happen.
I want to talk about your parents and their relationship, what you remember of, I believe your father was a very loving, affectionate person, what you learned from that, just watching the two of them. Yes.
You're talking about watching my mother and father.
Yes, the relationship, what you learned from them, the way in which you, I believe, as I said, your father was very affectionate, very loving.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he never stopped calling my mother his girlfriend. Even after being married to her for so many years, he still called her his girlfriend. And he had a favorite song that he used to sing for her with his guitar every time there was a function. And he would always say, "Where's my girlfriend? Do you remember when I used to sing this song for you when we were courting?" And it was a song that he loved to sing for all the time. Pagan Moon was the name of the song that he sang for all the time. So that's how loving he was. And I never saw my parents argue. Never. Although he would say to us, "Look, don't think we don't argue." But, we go to the room and we'll argue. When we hear a knock on the door, we'll keep quiet and smile and say, "Oh, darling, I love you, I love you." So you guys don't see that side of things that sometimes we differ. That's how he used to teach us.
And we really do appreciate you taking the time to share with us, Kenneth Kaunda, memories about your father, the life you shared with him as a family, And of course, a difficult time for you, but as you say, one that is filled with very important lessons. Kenneth Kaunda, who is the son of Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, remember on the Globe on SABC News at 2100 hours, Peter Ndoro will be joined by former South African President Thabo Mbeki as he gives his tribute. This tribute continues for Dr. Kenneth Kaunda, who passed away earlier